in just a slight pivot, interesting story that came out. So, you know what's going on in Florida, right? And not just Florida. It's a lot of stuff going on in the states pertaining to different states, pertaining to young people and what's being taught to them in schools. Definitely as it pertains to sexuality and all those different things, you know? So let's go through some of this story, which is par for the course for what's going on. Today, Walt Disney, this is the title coming from Bounding in the Comics. The Walt Disney Company promises to create more LGBTQ plus content as activists attempt to coerce them to stop Florida passing a bill preventing gender identity instruction through third grade. So as it notes here, the bill in question is HB 1557, Parental Rights in Education. And according to the Florida Senate's website, the bill requires district school boards to adopt procedures that comport with certain provisions of law for notifying students, parents of specified information, requires such procedures to reinforce fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding upbringing and control of their children, prohibits a school district from adopting procedures or student support forms that prohibit school district personnel from notifying parent about specified information, or that encouraging student to withhold from parents such information. So it's more of a transparency thing is what this bill says for. I wish the bill just abolished public schools. Anyway, continue going. It says prohibits the bill, that is, school district personnel from discouraging or prohibiting parental notification and involvement in critical decisions affecting students' mental, emotional, or physical well-being, prohibits classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in certain grade levels, requires school districts to notify parents of healthcare services, authorizes parent to bring action against school district to obtain declaratory judgment, provides for additional award and injunctive relief, damage, and reasonable attorney fees, blah, blah, blah. Now, the bill specifically states that classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through third grade or in a manner that is not age appropriate for developmentally appropriate for students in according with state standards. Now, in response to this bill, and I saw a lot of this, it notes that activists have demanded that Walt Disney Company and others take a stand against it. Scott Maxwell in the Orlando Sentinel declared Walt Disney World is a prime example. The parks preach inclusion in their marketing campaigns, but Disney has given money to every single sponsor and co-sponsor of this year's infamous Don't Say Gay bill. That's what they call it, the Don't Say Gay bill. Later in his piece, Maxwell said, I emailed Disney World president Jeff Vail to ask why his company keeps funding the politicians who lead anti-gay crusades. And this is always the interesting thing about these folks that claim to be of this community in terms of their activism, is that they will conflate two different things. And it's like, hey, they probably shouldn't be putting this in the minds of these children at such a young age. Well, that means you're anti-gay. The term doesn't mean shit. Author Eric Cervini declared he would be boycotting all Disney products, writing on Twitter, I am boycotting Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, Hulu, blah, 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 until Disney comes out forcefully against the Don't Say Gay legislation and pledges to permanently cease contributions to the bill supporters. In response, this was reported by WDW News Today, Walt Disney Company released a statement that reads, this is where it gets funny. We understand how important this issue is to our LGBTQ plus employees and many others for nearly a century. Disney has been a unifying force that brings people together. We are determined that it remains a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. The biggest impact we have in creating a more inclusive world is through the inspiring content we produce. I got you. The welcoming culture we create here in the diverse, all the buzz terms are there, communication or community organizations we support, including those LGBTQ plus community or in that community. So, as mentioned, back in 2020, you got Chapek and all these guys. They said they would have an increased commitment to putting people. This was 2 years ago. I remember this. Like a commitment to the LGBT community and all that, which is why you got some of the movie choices and why it seems like fucking everybody is gay, or obviously there's like an overrepresentation, it seems, if they want to care so much about representation. And they value inclusion and all that, and they're talking about Chapek, I guess, talking about this. I don't really see Disney as characterizing itself as left-leaning or right-leaning, yet standing for values. Values are universal. Values are respect. Values of decency. Values of integrity. And values of inclusion. Now, why you think this is goes back to information that I have kind of showed you guys evidence of many times on this channel. And that is that in the entertainment sector, it's not just the community. It's the communities that the left has utilized for their support and being able to have the power it is that they have. So whether it be in the entertainment sector, I think is really they're dominant and they control. They have to act, and this is what they want. They have to act as a enforcement wing for them and a validation wing for them. So it's not enough that you exist and maybe don't care about politics, or that's not anything that you concern yourself with, though Disney absolutely does. And because they've catered to this community, if they get any sort of issues out of it, they get what they fucking deserve as far as I'm concerned. But the important thing to mention right here is the strategy and how you see that it always happens. It's like, hey, this of which, you probably shouldn't be in the first place, you need to be taking a stand. And your stance needs to be aligned with us because they think that they belong to them. And to be fair, Disney and all of these companies have bent to them. I mean, you saw, speaking of 2020, the Summer of Love and all that, all these big companies, you saw where they were all co-signing all these different social justice movements. And there's no balance. I think that's the main thing of what frustrates people with these companies. It's not that they are political. It's like that's putting it way, way too easy. It's not that it's just that they're political. It's more of there's no balance. So it's like preferably you wouldn't engage in that shit, and in a perfect world, it wouldn't matter. But that's not what we have. So if you're going to go that route and you talk so much about inclusive, what is inclusive, then you have to encompass, or rather include per se, other, especially at minimum, the other dominant kind of ideologies or philosophies from a political sense. And they don't do that. There's only one acceptable. You saw what, speaking of Disney, what happened to Gina Carano. There's only really one acceptable line of thinking. That's it. It's authoritarian leftism, and outside of that, your views are seen as abhorrent, and you'll be treated as such. And this is why I talk about the parallel economy so much, and why these companies, they belong to the authoritarian left. They prioritize them, and everybody that's generally associated with the authoritarian left, that's who they answer to, and vice versa. And I don't think it's worth even attempting to try to change these cats and their approach if they've already told you what the game plan was. I think at this point, it's better to build something that's going to be competitive with them and then deprive them of the fucking money that they would have of yours. Because as it stands, we cover story after story after story of groups of people thinking that entertainment belongs to them, and that's because they've been felt to be uncomfortable. And instead of, which would be, if they had a nutsack, they'd say, go fuck yourselves. Go fuck yourselves, all of you. We don't care. They don't do that. Instead, it's like, oh, we're going to come out with a statement and say, we're here for you and all this other stupid shit because, well, that's who they answer to, bro. That's who they answer.
You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Cannon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.